Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Here, our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, we start with the horrible shooting, small Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin. And we're getting precious few details about the shooter, aren't we, Mr. Producer? I want you to hear just a minute or so of the most up-to-date information about this horrendous shooting. Cut one, go.
Here are the details. Today at 10:57 a.m., our team
Excuse me, this is the police chief, I should have mentioned, Madison, Wisconsin. Chief Sean Barnes. Let's start at the top, please. Go ahead.
Here are the details. Today at 10:57 a.m., our team was called to the Abundant Life Christian School in reference to an active shooter. We know that 3 people are dead, including the suspect shooter. We know that the suspect shooter was a teenage student who attended the school. At this time, we're not releasing the age or gender of the student or any other identifying remarks about the student. 2 other people have died. That died were a teacher and a teenage student. 6 other people were injured. 2 students are now in critical condition in the hospital, and these injuries are considered life-threatening injuries.
Terrible.
4 students are also at other area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. But these are just the physical injuries that we know about. We know that this was the middle of the day, of a school day, and so there will be other injuries that we'll have to face for a very, very long time. And we're going to do everything we can as a community to heal those injuries as well.
Now, Mr. Producer, is that all we know about the shooter? CNN says it's a female shooter. I always wonder why there's so little information that comes out about these shooters. I don't mean deep dives into their backgrounds and so forth. But we're not going to learn the age of the shooter or anything else about the shooter. CNN says it's a female. It's a terrible thing. You know, I remember when the Christian school was targeted in Tennessee. Do you remember that, Rich? I don't even know if they've ever released that manifesto or not. But in any event, it became a big issue, became an issue of litigation. I know there was an effort to get that information out. Just a horrendous thing. So you had a Christian school literally targeted, and murder took place there. So we never try and get ahead of the story here. I'm not going to get ahead of the story here. My antenna go up, and I wonder why so little is known, because they know a lot more than they're telling us. And I do understand family has to be informed, but I'm talking about the perpetrator, the killer. I would like to know more about that person. I guess we will at some point. And then, of course, the chorus line of gun control. You know, ladies and gentlemen, in the most horrendous regimes on the face of the earth, there's gun control. Gun control. And there's mass murder at the hands of the state. Now, when our country was founded, when our Bill of Rights were adopted, the Second Amendment in particular, there's no question we have a history of gun ownership in this country, and they wanted to secure that. They wanted to enshrine it in our basic law, which is the Constitution plus the Bill of Rights and now other amendments as well. Now, why did they do that? Not simply because it's a way of life, not simply because people could go hunting, not simply because people could protect themselves. I'm just telling you our history, whether people want to hear it or not. It's because these revolutionaries, these colonists, they had to deal with a regime, a monarchy, that was utterly out of control, that would station soldiers at their homes, that would arrest people on the spot, and so forth and so on. So they wanted the ability to fight back, to push back. People need to understand this country was founded in a revolution. Not like the French Revolution or any communist revolution. It was a revolution to defend individual liberty, to defend the Judeo-Christian belief system, to support representative government, to do all the things that you and I hold dear. That you and I hold dear. Second Amendment is very, very important for a lot of reasons. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't own a weapon and don't understand this, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to own a weapon, and you don't have to understand this. But the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, they exist to protect the individual. They exist to protect the society from government. That's what they're there for. And they're always under attack, whether it's the First or Second or Fifth or Sixth or Eighth or Ninth, 10th, 14th Amendments are always under attack. The basic concept of the Constitution is always under attack. So immediately, when something horrific like this happens, they say there's too many guns. And I find it interesting, it's the same Democrats, for the most part, the same party, for the most part, that supports open borders. Well, what do you think comes across open borders? Gang members, murderers, terrorists, fentanyl, and illegal weapons. Illegal weapons are pouring over our border. You know what amazes me? There's no reporting on this. There is no reporting on this. Communist Chinese provide many of the weapons, but so do others. And they're pouring into our country illegally with the open border. Illegally. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this aspect. I just wanted to address it generally, but as time goes on, we'll learn more. I'm starting to get very nervous about the targeting of these Christian schools now, Mr. Producer. We'll see what this is all about. I'm still nervous about it, regardless of what it's all about. I'm getting very nervous about the targeting of synagogues, Jewish synagogues. I'm getting very nervous about this. And I can tell you our own Chabad rabbi, and I mean, he has to actually own a weapon, as do many of them. Has to go out and practice. He's proficient with it, but can you imagine? You're a religious leader in your community, in your neighborhood. You have to arm yourself. On the high holidays, we actually have armed security, policemen or ex-military. We have armed security to pray to God. To pray to God. That's what we should be talking about, the perpetrators. Who are they? Who are they? They're perpetrators. What are they all about? Where do they come from? What is their objective? But we'll never have that honest discussion. We have jihadists in this country who want to kill Jews. We have others in this country who want to kill Christians. Yes, we have people in this country who want to kill gay people or whatever. But why don't we talk about people we let into the country, ideological position? I mean, here we have a guy, CEO of United Healthcare. He's murdered in cold blood. He's shot in the back. And then 2 more bullets are put in him just to make sure he's dead. And we have, maybe it's not big, but it's big enough, people raising money for his defense. People making T-shirts celebrating him. A cold-blooded murder. Because they don't like our healthcare system. Well, maybe they ought to try one in Britain or France or Canada and see how great those Bernie Sanders type Soviet-style healthcare systems are. You ever wonder why the Europeans have so many yellow teeth, Mr. Producer? I say this tongue-in-cheek, but there's a truthful aspect to it, because the dentists are union members under the government, and they go on strike, or they have a quota, and once they fit their quota, they're done. You ever wonder why people with hellish diseases and illnesses, some of them quite rare, come to the United States? Because they can't get the treatment they need in Europe and in Canada. You ever wonder why people try to come into our country when they have heart issues or diabetes or cancer or what have you? Because they can't get treatment on time. They all have health care, they just don't get medical care. It's a big difference, you know. Then I hear we pay 17% of our gross domestic product on health care. And my answer is this. Well, what else are we going to spend it on? Isn't that important? Seriously. What should we spend it on? Climate change? Electric vehicles? And when you're really sick, you need the medicine. You need the healthcare system. Is it perfect? Well, what is perfect? Are we perfect? Are you perfect? Nothing's perfect. But it's still a great system compared to the rest of the world. And there's simply no question about it. The idea that government-run healthcare will be fair, that it'll cost nothing, that you'll get what you need when you need it. No, you don't. Government-run everything is overpriced and underperforms. They piss away $1 trillion. It's nothing. Nothing. Nothing at all. So 3 are dead. 2 are in very critical condition with life-threatening, obviously, gun wounds. And I count among them, of course, the killer. Again, CNN is reporting it's a female individual, but I don't know anything beyond that. None of us do. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It lowered interest rates by 1/4. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. CNN, NBC, MSNBC. Don't even have all the facts. Doesn't matter. Gun control, gun control, gun control. In fact, in the case of CNN, they have this guy, Andrew McCabe, who's a real reprobate, and he says it doesn't even matter what the context is. We need to address gun control. It's just awful. It's awful, like this is going to fix the situation. The situation's not going to be fixed by so-called gun control, whatever that means. None of us really know. Moreover, it's simply not going to happen, not what they say they want to happen, so they're constantly praying at false idols. Praying at false idols. I heard the police chief also say that, in so many words, we should not have metal detectors in our schools. First of all, this is a private religious school, and I believe they should have metal detectors. Why wouldn't you? You have metal detectors at airports, you have metal detectors in federal buildings, you have metal detectors all over the place, don't you, Mr. Perdue? They have it on Capitol Hill. It seems to me if it's good for the bureaucrats, if it's good for the airlines, if it's good for the congressmen, it should be good enough for our children. Why wouldn't we have metal detectors? Are they that intrusive? Of course not. That seems like a simple, not a fix, but one of many things you can do to try and protect the facility and the children within it. They're too ideological on the other side. They're just too ideological. Common sense things that we would do at sports stadiums and other places, we're not supposed to do them at schools, and yet when schools are targeted, isn't that an issue? Yes, gun control. Well, one of the ways you can control guns in a school is to have metal detectors. But we can't have that. Well, why not? And knives, for that matter. I don't get it. Again, other than this bizarre ideology. It's very bizarre to me. Now, again, we will wait. We will see what information there is. I won't bring these people back, of course. Army-Navy game, that was a hell of a game. My wife Julie and I had a tremendous honor of being there. And I want to thank incoming Senator Dave McCormick and his wonderful wife, Dina. She's just fabulous. I got to meet her for the first time. What a wonderful couple. And what a wonderful senator he's going to be. Combat veteran, very successful businessman, just a really decent guy. Who'll be really a schlub, a guy that was running on his father's name, and finally that ran out of steam. And while there, President of the United States, incoming President of the United States, incoming Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader in the Senate, or soon to be, Thune, and so many other people. Pete Hegseth was there. Daniel Penny was there. Tulsi Gabbard was there. Who am I missing? Elon Musk was there. Other Fox people were there. I'll tell you a little bit about it without getting too personal. It's just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. Really a diverse group of wonderful people having a great time. And watching a game that really there was an upset. Navy beat Army. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold Gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
You're listening to Denali, the great one.
The great one.
And you can call in now, 877-381-3811.
There were a lot of wonderful people in that box watching that game, and it really was exciting, as well as intriguing, to see the people with all these diverse backgrounds in business and politics and elsewhere. Just fantastic. And everybody had a wonderful time. It's not a big, I'm partying like a bunch of fools. I mean, it was just a very, very nice event. And you folks in Pennsylvania are very lucky to have David McCormick. You just are. He's an exceptional individual, as kind as can be. Just fantastic. At the top of the hour, I'm bringing in our friend, Professor Paul Kengor of Grove City. Now, why would I do that? Number one, he's great. He's brilliant. But I want him to remind us of what it's like to have somebody sell out to the Soviet Union and the communists. You know, they like to talk about Trump and Russia because they've lied about that. But I want to remind everybody just how deeply ingrained the Democrat Party and the line of the Senate were with our Cold War enemies. As they sit there and pass judgment on Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and who else? Kash Patel. By the way, where's our friend Marco? I haven't even seen or heard of him. Have you, Mr. Producer? Ooh, baby. I know what's going on there. Very strange. Now, this drone issue, it's not going to go away until there's some explanation for this. And I think we're not going to get a real definitive answer until President Trump is inaugurated again. Because this guy in the White House, he's a complete fool. But he had what had to be about an hour-long press conference at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, the difference between him and this clown in the Oval Office right now is like night and day. And he's moving from one subject to the other. He's very open about different things, and let's take a listen to this. Cut 5, go.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big distance.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people. And they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth? They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
And it's just such a breath of fresh air. And then there's this point that the president makes, and it's interesting because I focused my Sunday opening comment on this, the effort to sabotage the Trump presidency, massive spending, putting rules in place, making it more difficult to remove bureaucrats. And I mentioned this issue also about the selling off the border wall, pennies on the dollar, which means it'll be extraordinarily expensive for us to finish the wall, much more than it otherwise would have been. Here's the president today. Cut 15, go.
We ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive, and now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. And the administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. They know we're going to use it, and if we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it, and it'll cost double what it cost years ago, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're talking about a lot of wall. I built much more than I said I was going to build, but then after it was built, I said, we can do some more, because it's sort of like water, people flow through, and that will pretty much really take care of it. And what happened is they just, as you see, they're trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, and that's really, that has nothing to do with a smooth transition. That has to do with people really trying to stop our nation. And all it means really is that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more, not even talking about the time. The time would be pretty long, but we'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars more on building the same wall that we already have.
Isn't that horrendous, folks? Seriously. Isn't that just appalling, what's happening here? Then he was asked probably one of the dumbest questions I've ever heard, and he handled it so beautifully. Listen to this. Cut 22, go.
Are you entertaining the idea of preemptive strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities? Against Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, I can't tell you that.
Would you?
I mean, it's a wonderful question, but how can am I going to do preemptive strikes? Why would I say that? Can you imagine if I said yes or no? You'd say, that was strange that he answered that way. Am I going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Is that a serious question? How could I answer a question like that?
But think about the structure of the question. Are you going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Would you tell somebody if you're going to do a preemptive strike? It ceases to be a preemptive strike, doesn't it, Mr. Producer? You just telegraphed it. But, of course, his answer was brilliant. He said, what are you talking about? I'm going to stand here and answer that question? It was. It was one of the dumbest questions you'll ever hear. There was a lot more that was great, but I'm not going to play any more. Those 3 clips kind of sum it up. Really, really outstanding. I want to get back to this issue, this celebration, or these excuses for the cold-blooded murder of this poor guy, the CEO of United Healthcare. And his murder wasn't even insured by United Healthcare. Just one of the biggest companies, so he murdered him. And we have, it's funny, when Donald Trump, when they attempted to murder Donald Trump, there's 2 assassination attempts, and the media were very quick to say, it's horrible, horrible, but he's Hitler, he's Hitler. I think I pointed out several times. They don't really care. In fact, some of them, in their quiet moments, were hoping that it had succeeded. And I believe this. I believe it strongly. They won't say it, but by their actions and their attitude, that's what they meant. They went right back to the same dehumanization campaign against Donald Trump. The first time they waited a few days, maybe a week, and that was about it. The second time they didn't even wait. It was the next day. And I could point out the hosts on MSNBC and CNN, the New York Times guests, the Washington Post guests. I could point them out. They weren't upset. They were upset that it might turn the public towards Trump. But they weren't upset, many of them. Quite the contrary. And now with this now with this murder of this United Healthcare CEO, it's just incredible. I want to play for you the latest. Let's see, I'm looking for Bernie Sanders, Mr. Perdue. There he is. Now, they always have this, is totally unacceptable. I can't do violence. But, people are getting pissed off. And why is Bernie Sanders on Meet the Press again? Meet the Press, CNN, MSNBC. He's a Stalinist. And they keep pushing him out there because these media platforms, these hosts, the producers, They support him. They support him. That's why. That's why they promote him and AOC. These are extremists. These are radicals. But it's okay. And here he goes. Cut 23, go.
Elizabeth Warren obviously understands killing and murder and shooting somebody in the back is totally unacceptable. But what I think has happened in the last few months is that what you have seen rising up is people's anger at a health insurance industry which denies people the health care that they desperately need while they make billions and billions of dollars in profit.
Let me address this. Let me address this. The government runs a lot of our healthcare system. Runs the VA, runs other programs and insurance programs and so forth. So if you're unhappy with your local VA, and Biden made it virtually impossible, not impossible, virtually impossible to find alternative health care, which Donald Trump did in the private sector and fought hard for it, and you're not getting the care that you believe you deserve, and you're upset with government-run health care. Of course it's wrong. Of course you don't shoot somebody in the back, but I understand the anger that's driven. So if you're angry with the government, I mean, these are the people that claim that January 6th is the worst event in American history. Where the only person murdered or killed, at least that day, was a veteran by the so-called police officer who shot blindly through the window and killed Ashley Babbitt. Right there in cold blood. She wasn't even armed. A veteran. He's praised. They act like she never existed. And some people had heart attacks after and so forth, and they blame it on January 6th. I mean, so if I have a heart attack today, I can blame it on yesterday, right, Mr. Producer? But the point is, the left always justifies violence. Against the cops, against the system. The left is born in violence. Marxism is a violent ideology. Marx talks about violence. Marx talks about a period of despotism. And 100 million people have died running around talking about Marxism and pushing Marxism and revolting from Marxism and so forth. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is not a violent philosophy. We're not interested in overthrowing anything. We want people to embrace, enforce, execute the Constitution of the United States. We're defending liberty. We're defending individualism. Excuse me. We're defending the cops to try and protect the vast majority of the population from violent thugs. We want a secure border. Why? To protect the American people. That's why. We want a strong military. Why? To protect us from evil foreign foes, genocidal monsters. We're not the ones that push an ideology of violence. If you're a Marxist, you're pushing an ideology of violence. In every respect. Where's there ever been a peaceful Marxist revolution? Where's there ever been a peaceful Marxist government? If you're more comfortable with it, where's there ever been a peaceful communist revolution or a peaceful communist government? Never. Never. Healthcare system. You know, the sad thing is the propaganda on the left often works. Because everybody doesn't get everything they think they should get out of the healthcare system or out of any system. Tell me, what about government education? How's that going? It sucks. The test scores are going down. Children are being taught a lot of mush and worse. So it's okay to get violent there? No. People shouldn't get violent. But the left controls it with the teachers' unions and the administrators that come out of the teachers' unions, right? How about our colleges and universities? Same thing. And yet who's violent? The Marxists at the colleges and universities, the Islamists at the colleges and universities. They're the violent ones. So this crap about, well, the healthcare system industry denies people health care, and yet they make billions and billions. Who makes billions and billions? How much does it cost to bring a brand new drug to the market? How come the news reporters never explain that? How much does it cost? How long does it take? How many people are involved? It's enormous. It's enormous. Billions and billions of dollars, he says. The federal government gets trillions and trillions of dollars and pisses away billions and billions of dollars. And yet he favors more government. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I just want to better understand the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Stalinist left. So if you're upset with Social Security, you think you're getting ripped off? Obviously, it's wrong to shoot somebody in the back, but you understand if somebody gets upset to the point of violence. Is that right? What if you're upset that Medicare doesn't cover something? Same thing? What if you're upset that your food stamps don't cover what you want them to cover? Same thing? What if you're angry at the DMV? What if you're on a government-run train system? You know, like almost every train system. And you're unhappy about the way you're treated there. I mean, what kind of insanity is this, America? But look how the left pretends they don't like violence, but then on the other hand, it's always, we oppose violence. Of course we oppose violence. But I can understand why people are upset. Just remember, it was a Bernie Sanders supporter almost murdered Steve Scalise. Because when you keep dehumanizing people, when you keep pounding against, quote-unquote, the system, that the system's out to get you, that the system's only for the rich, it's only for the white man, it's only for this, it's only for that. It has consequences. When you're a public person, whether you're a senator from Vermont, whether you're a radio host, whether you're a TV host, these things have consequences. If you keep banging away the way that they do on the left. We've got a lot more coming up in the show this evening. I can't even believe we're 1 hour through. We're 1/3 through the program already. I feel like I've barely gotten started here. Well, the engines are revving. Stick with us. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, we got a ruling in part from the acting state judge, Judge Merchan, This is CNN. Judge rules Trump does not have immunity from hush money conviction. President-elect Donald Trump does not have immunity from prosecution in the so-called hush money case in which a jury found him guilty earlier this year. Judge Juan Merchan ruled tonight. The judge said the testimony at the trial relates entirely to unofficial conduct entitled to no immunity protections. Story is developing. Why won't these guys listen to me, Mr. Producer? First of all, immunity is a good argument, but there's no great argument in front of this judge. He won't care. That's number one. Number two, the better argument, the strongest argument is the supremacy clause, the fact that this acting state judge was making decisions about federal campaign laws, the fact that this acting state judge allowed a misdemeanor state statute, which had already told, to become a felony statute by using a federal law. So that violates the supremacy clause. He has no authority whatsoever in this regard, in addition to the fact that the non-disclosure agreements is what we call them, not hush money. The non-disclosure agreements did not violate campaign law, but that's not his decision to make, this judge. In other words, he's way out of his lane. And I keep explaining this. And then, of course, we have the Department of Justice memos, 1973 and 2000, which say you can't indict a sitting president. And their explanation would obviously apply to this for two reasons. Number one, they didn't just say indict. The whole trial process would cripple the head of the executive branch. And there's only one head of the executive branch under our Constitution. There's only two people elected nationwide, and that's the president and the vice president. But the president has special powers that the vice president does not. Vice president almost no power. President has enormous authority. And so how would that apply to the states? And I have to keep educating the phony law professors and the phony former federal prosecutors. It's very simple. Very simple. And it only applies to a president, not to a vice president or anything else. The state doesn't have the power to essentially reverse federalism and interfere with a presidential administration. That is, the argument is that you don't have a federal charge against a sitting president because that would undermine the office of the presidency. So, well, then you can't have a state charge. The state doesn't have the authority to interfere in the federal constitutional construct. So the supremacy clause, among other things. And so we explained, Arthur Ferguson and I, we explained. They're common law arguments that the court has taken up rarely, but it takes them up. It has taken them up. A writ of mandamus, a writ of fill in the blank, it doesn't matter. The Supreme Court took up Bush versus Gore. There was no straight path to the Supreme Court. But the brilliant Ted Olson filed what he called an emergency appeal, whatever that means. And the court said, yeah, we're going to take that up as a writ of certiorari, not to get into the dirt here, which would be a statutory appeal. But there was no statutory authority. But the court didn't care, wanted to hear the case. Here, you can call it a writ of certiorari, a writ of mandamus, a writ of whatever you want. You bring it to the door of the Supreme Court, they either take it or they don't. And that's the problem here. You're stuck in the gulag of the New York Democrat Party so-called justice system. Now this guy, Merchan, is a fraud and a phony. He's a reprobate. He's a hack. And he doesn't want to let go of this case. He needs to be forced to let go of this case. Not by a federal district judge, not by some federal appellate panel or federal appellate court. Stop wasting time. Do as I suggest. And if you fail on that front, so be it. There's really not much else you can do. You can simultaneously keep going up the appellate ladder in New York. But good God, how many times do I have to explain this, Rich? I explain it here, I explain it on Blaze, I explain it on Fox, I explain it over and over again. I've written about it. I don't know. Well, the spectacle of going to the Supreme Court, there's no spectacle. If the court says no, the court says no. It's called the justice system. Anyway, I want to move on. We'll keep an eye on this, don't worry. This is ground zero for this stuff. Dear friend of mine, Paul Kengor, professor at a great college, Grove City, To me, he's the expert, really, on the old Soviet communism, Brezhnev and before, Brezhnev and after. And Paul, I wanted to bring you on the program. You wrote extensively about documents that were uncovered, one in particular, but documents that were uncovered in the old Soviet Union when it collapsed, that demonstrated that John Tunney, then a senator from California, Ted Kennedy, then a senator from Massachusetts, also a presidential wannabe on a fairly regular basis, that they worked, particularly Kennedy, to try and defeat Ronald Reagan with the help of the communists in the Soviet Union. Please explain, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good to be with you again. Yeah, so now we know this from an actual document, okay? And that, that's the really, so if you're looking for a smoking gun here, okay, and the document is no less than a Soviet KGB document, okay? And I'm looking at it right now, and the date on it was May 14th, 1983. And it was written by the head of the KGB, Viktor Chebrikov. And he's writing to the head of the Soviet Union, Yuri Andropov, right? Soviet General Secretary Yuri Andropov. And by the way, you know Soviet history really well. Andropov had headed the KGB himself for a long time and was just a really sinister, nasty, SOB at the KGB.
Killer.
Yeah, he really was. He was horrible. So this is May 14th, 1983, and it says at the top of it that it's confidential. The way that we got the document, it was the early 1990s. Boris Yeltsin was opening up the Soviet archives, and a reporter from the BBC and London Times named Tim Sebastian was the first one to report this. In fact, he reported it in the London Times, January 2nd, 1992. He reported a little bit about the document, showed a picture of the upper right corner of it. That was it. And then there was a rush on the archives. It was the Central Committee Archives of the Soviet Union. There was a rush on the archives to get a copy of this document. I got a full document. I got it in Russian. I got it translated in English. I published it in a couple books, including my 2006 book on Ronald Reagan, The Crusader. That's actually the book that's the basis of the Reagan movies, so it's a pretty well-known book. And the actual statement on it says confidential offer, and it's written to the head of it says, I'm looking at it right now, subject head, special importance, and then it says, regarding Senator Kennedy's request to the General Secretary of the Communist Party, YV or Yuri Andropov. And then it says in the memo that Kennedy is very troubled about U.S.-Soviet relations, the deterioration in U.S.-Soviet relations. And he said the problem here, Mark, was not the murderous despot in the Soviet Union, but Ronald Reagan. The problem was Reagan's belligerence, all right, according to Kennedy, as expressed in this document. And then it said this is made worse by Reagan's intransigence, his stubbornness. And in fact, Chebrikov said, according to Kennedy, the current threat is due to the president's refusal to engage any modification to his politics. And then further, Mark, it says that refusal was exacerbated. It's made worse by Reagan's political success, which even worse is making him really reelectable because the election is coming up. So by the fourth and fifth paragraph of Chebrikov's memo to Andropov, he really gets to the thrust of what Kennedy's offering. And he says, Reagan, he's soaring to reelection. Is there anywhere where he's vulnerable? Because they know he's really popular. I mean, Reagan's on the way to winning 49 out of 50 states. And so Chebrikov said, according to Kennedy, the only real threats to Reagan are problems of war and peace and Soviet-American relations. Quote, these issues, according to the senator, will without a doubt become the most important of the election campaign. Kennedy believes that, given the state of current affairs and in the interest of peace, it would be prudent and timely to undertake the following steps to counter the militaristic politics of Reagan. So right here, right, Kennedy has made an offer. It was, as you said, it was communicated directly to the head of the KGB by John Tunney, who had been a Democratic senator from California and was Teddy's law school roommate at University of Virginia. And so they offer for Andropov to meet with Ted Kennedy in Moscow for a personal meeting. And the memo says, Chebrikov wrote this to Andropov, the main purpose of the meeting, according to the senator, would be to arm Soviet officials with explanations regarding problems of nuclear disarmament so they would be better prepared and more convincing during appearances in the USA. Kennedy said a strategy was needed to help the Soviets, quote, influence Americans. Influence Americans. So he offered to, Kennedy would fly to Moscow. This is all in the document. He would go there in August or September of 1983. He would arrange televised interviews with Andropov to come to the USA. Kennedy and his friends said Chebrikov would help out, and he named specifically Walter Cronkite and Barbara Walters. They're both listed by name in the memo. And because Reagan is good at propaganda, right, this strategy to influence Americans, especially with the election coming up, this would be a crucial thing to do in order to counter Reagan. And by the way, the only thing that stopped this, and you know this history well, September 1st, 1983, the Soviets under Andropov blew Korean airliner 007 out of the sky, killing over 200 passengers, including, I think it was 69, 70 Americans. And then after that, Andropov got sick, Andropov died. But this was a direct offer by Kennedy within the context of Reagan's reelection campaign to influence the Soviets directly to the KGB, and made by Kennedy liaison through a confidential memo. So
now, let me ask you a couple of questions, Paul. Let me ask you a question. So this comes out, you point out, in 92, 93, correct?
Yeah,
when does it
London
come out?
Times, January 2nd, 1992.
1992. Ted Kennedy dies in 2009.
Right,
So between then and the
17
death
years
of
later.
Ted Kennedy, really the media didn't do much about it, did they? They never really confronted him, or if they did, it was a real hit and miss, wasn't it?
They did absolutely nothing whatsoever, to the point where when I was told about the document from a Ukrainian American who said that he heard that I was working on this book on the Cold War, and he said, you need to know about this document. He described it to me in an email. I said, you got to be kidding. I mean, there's no way. You got a document that says that? No way. And he said, yes, I'm telling you. And so he sent it to me. Also involved in this, the late, great Herb Romerstein, who was very well-versed, Venona Papers, Richard Pipes, the Harvard professor for 50, 60 years. I had Pipes read it. Democrats, Jerry and Leona Schechter, who wrote the book Sacred Secrets on Oppenheimer. They were old Cold War Democrats. In fact, Jerry worked for Jimmy Carter, died not that long ago. They were my agents for this book. They read it, reviewed it all very, very carefully. And I reported it in 2006. I published the whole document.
All right, so let me ask you some more questions before we run out of time. Did the Democrat Party denounce Ted Kennedy for his treason?
Of course not.
Did the media denounce Ted Kennedy for his treason?
Crickets, not a word.
The Lion of the Senate, isn't that what they called him?
Sure did. Sure did.
And they looked up to him, and they embraced him, and they considered him a great leader, and he was on the Judiciary Committee and other committees, correct?
Absolutely right.
Don't you find it a little odd then, Professor Kengor, when we come back, my question to you, is all of a sudden the Democrats are very concerned about Russia. They create this whole Russia collusion lie, which was a lie from beginning to end and in between. And now apparently they have problems with some of President Trump's nominees. Let me ask you this, and then we'll go to the break and come back. Is there any nominee that Donald Trump has proposed that has done anything of the kind that Ted Kennedy did, this aggressive, extensive effort to work with the communist regime to defeat his political opposition, the sitting president of the United States? Answer that when I come back. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Levin, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. By the way, AP is reporting a 17-year-old female student is the murderer in that case in the Christian school in Wisconsin. A 17-year-old female student was the murderer. Paul Kengor, so over the break, you had time to noodle over this. Can you think of anybody that Donald Trump has even nominated that comes close to doing what Ted Kennedy did?
No, absolutely not. You know, as I was thinking about this, Mark, so the equivalent to this today would be like a Republican senator in the spring of 2023 secretly contacting the head of the Russian KGB today, which is called the FSB, with a confidential offer from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin to undermine Joe Biden's 2024 reelection bid. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what that would be. That would be the exact equivalent, and with a document to prove it. So, you know, the Russian hoax, collusion hoax, and everything, they came up with absolutely nothing. You'd have an actual memo from the current head of the FSB KGB written to Putin. Yeah, with an offer from a Republican senator, from Donald Trump to fly to Moscow to meet with Putin with the direct point of undermining Biden's 2024
And just to underscore your point, they impeached him over nothing. A phone call with Zelensky, which was a perfectly fine phone call. So imagine, you're 100% right. I bring this up because of Tulsi Gabbard. You know, there's a lot of criticism of her involving Syria and Russia and so forth and so on. But I'm looking at this Ted Kennedy thing, and when I find these left-wing Democrat senators say what they're saying, preparing to do what they're going to do, I think to myself, what a bunch of hypocritical bastards, no?
Yeah, well, and they've always done this. I mean, remember Jim Wright, the Speaker of the House, right? 1980s, meeting with Daniel Ortega over the Contras. And, of course, when the Democrats do this, you know, they're heroes. They're freedom fighters. Mm-hmm. You know, they're doing the Lord's work. You know, they're saving the country. But as soon as anybody on the Republican side even talks to somebody overseas for whatever purpose, I mean, they start yelling and screaming collusion. But in the case of Kennedy, I mean, this was the highest level, the head of the KGB to the head of the Soviet Union, confidential memo.
And they love Kennedy right to the bitter end, and they still love him, and they still treat him like a conquering hero, when in fact what he did was treasonous, absolutely treasonous. Professor Paul Kengor, American Spectator, I want to thank you, my brother. God bless you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Same to you. Thanks so much.
Take care of yourself. Now what do you have to say, liberal Democrats? I'll be right back. You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Levin, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Matt Levin, speaking to the 4 out of 5 Americans who are literate at 877-381-3811.
All right, let me update you on this shooting. The Associated Press, teacher and a teenage student killed in a shooting at a private Christian school in Wisconsin. AP Madison, a teenage student, opened fire with a handgun at a private Christian school in Wisconsin, killing a teacher and another teenager during the final week before Christmas break. The shooter also died. The shooter also wounded others at Abundant Life Christian School, including 2 students who were in critical condition and 4 with less serious injuries. I'm feeling a little dismayed now, so close to Christmas, Barnes said. He's the chief of police. The shooter was a 17-year-old female student, a law enforcement official told the Associated Press. The official was not authorized to discuss the ongoing investigation and spoke to the AP on the condition of anonymity. Police said the shooter was dead by apparent suicide when officers arrived. Chief Barnes declined to give details about the shooter, partly out of respect for the family. With a few rare exceptions, a 17-year-old can't legally possess a gun in Wisconsin, so that's an important point, isn't it? In other words, there's absolute gun control for a 17-year-old. Abundant Life is a non-denominational Christian school, kindergarten through high school, with approximately 390 students in Madison, the state capital. Children and families were reunited at a medical building about a mile away. Let's see here. Someone from the school called 911 to report an active shooter shortly before 11 a.m. It was 10:57. First responders who were in training just 3 miles away dashed to the school for an actual emergency. Investigators believe the shooter used a 9mm pistol. Well, they would know for sure now because she committed suicide, so the pistol's there. A law enforcement official told AP the official spoke on the condition of anonymity again because they were not authorized to discuss the investigation. I'm not aware that the school had metal detectors, nor should schools have metal detectors. It's a safe space, says Barnes. Well, not safe enough, and this is part of the problem. A safe place. A safe space. So all safe spaces shouldn't have metal detectors? Is that it? I wonder if the police precinct has metal detectors. Just curious. Police blocked off roads around the school. Federal agents were on the scene to assist local law enforcement. No shots were fired by police. And it goes on. Shootings have set off a fervent debate about gun control, and it goes on. Well, she was 17, and in Wisconsin, she wasn't allowed to own a gun. So I don't know what gun control they're arguing. I don't know who she got it from, whether it was a parent, who the hell knows? But we're going to debate gun control, and they won't even put metal detectors in schools. I mean, that is just so absurd. So absurd, in my humble opinion. You see this ABC News? George Stephanopoulos, they settled a lawsuit with Trump for $15 or $16 million because they accused him of being convicted of rape, which he was not convicted of rape. And I've said this over and over again. In fact, that's what they charged him with, but that's not what he was convicted of by a jury. And Simone Sanders, who, as I recall, was an advisor to Joe Biden, or maybe it was Kamala Harris, but I do remember that she was a very, very disgruntled individual. She was at a senior level, and they basically kicked her ass out. But there she is, MSLSD, which is where reprobates go. She had this to say, cut 10, go.
The press is in a difficult position. Everyone understands that. That doesn't change the obligation to be straightforward and objective when it comes to Donald Trump.
I would just say, this feels like it has a real chilling effect. Shout out to the standards department. Okay, standards is always making sure that we are keeping the bar high and substantive and accurate. But what George Stephanopoulos said in that interview, it seems to hold up with what the judge said after the fact. And now his news organization and himself, George Stephanopoulos himself, is paying $1 million of his own money to the lawyers, and ABC at $15 million. It's insane.
No, it's not insane. You throw the word rape around, you better know what the hell you're talking about. He was not convicted of rape. which was what the civil complaint headline basically was. Remember the story where she bumped into, I think it was George Conway or one of these reprobates who was advising her on how to go forward, and then some dark money billionaire Democrat helped finance her lawsuit against Trump. You know, it's so sleazy. It's so damnable. And people need to be held to account. And you win some and you lose some in these lawsuits. And from a business perspective, actually, ABC did the right thing. Now, these other networks are saying, what's the big deal? You shouldn't have done that. You've hurt us. Because they don't believe in the truth. You know, it's a very high bar for a public official. But when you accuse them of rape and they're not guilty of rape and they didn't rape anybody, that's kind of black and white. And so this is a victory. This is a victory for the truth. Nicole Hannah Jones, remember her 1619 Project? She is a Marxist. She is really a radical. She's way, way out there. I've spent way too much of my life on this broadcast talking about her and explaining her to the American people and what she wrote and the responses to what she wrote. She's very upset with this too, you see. But it's all about her. It turns out it's all about her. No surprise there. Cut 11, go.
We are facing an epic battle in the next 4 years with an administration that we know, I mean, as you just laid out, has a history of attacking journalists. Of
now, hold on. Barack Obama attacked journalists like nobody before. And nobody since. How come you lie about that? How come you don't mention that? Why is that? Nicole, may I call you Nicole? Why is that? Now, she's a multimillionaire spewing this crap, selling this crap, CRT and all the rest of it. 1619. You've had award-winning historians that have ripped her writings apart, said they're not historical. They're barely readable. But nonetheless, she's made a fortune out of this. And the fact of the matter is, he has a history of attacking journalists. Barack Obama had a history of prosecuting journalists. I write about it in On Freedom of the Press. That was my, I think, 2021 project, wasn't it, Mr. Producer? Something like that. Go ahead.
Journalists, of suing journalists, of surveilling journalists, and also...
He wasn't surveilling journalists. Obama was surveilling journalists. Biden was surveilling journalists. Look what they did to social media. We know from Twitter what they were doing. Trump didn't do that. What are you talking about? But it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Against the work of journalists, which is what Trump tried to do with the 1619 Project. So we as a press...
Hold on. Trump tried to do with the 1619 Project. Legislate against the work of journalists? What the hell is she talking about? Seriously. I have no idea. Go ahead.
It's a time where the committee to protect journalists...
Shut up, you idiot. Rambling buffoon. Fake fraud, phony. Just shut up. Sick of you. I don't even know why I played that. Why did I play that, Mr. Producer? Must have been a light moment. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/LEVIN, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Yes, this George Stephanopoulos, this lawsuit and so forth, it's so worrisome. What will it do to the free press? What free press? The hell are they talking about? I'm quite serious. What are they talking? What free press are they talking about? We don't have a free press. We have a press that's free to do as it wishes, but that's not what's meant by a free press. A free press is supposed to be an entity where the individuals who are involved in reporting to you and me are serious about gathering the facts, gathering information, and providing them without a political agenda or ideological agenda. Now, obviously, they won't be perfect. Everybody has a particular viewpoint, but you're supposed to try. They don't even try. You know, they write these screeds to each other. I've read some of them to you. I have some of them in my book on freedom of the press, as well as other books, where they say it's our duty, our responsibility as a press to cover Donald Trump differently. Oh, really? They always covered Donald Trump differently. Matter of fact, they always cover Republicans differently. But Donald Trump, they've done the worst of the worst, the way they've treated him. But this isn't a battle where they're defending a free press and challenging a free press. We're challenging the American Pravda. We're challenging the American Al Jazeera. That's what we're doing. If you accuse somebody of being found guilty of rape and he hasn't been, well, that's to be punished. Oh, they're going to punish the media. It's a funny thing, America. When this nation was founded, we had these libel laws. States had libel laws. And early on, when we didn't have a central government, those libel laws were used all the time, and they were used by so-called public figures. There was no distinction between a public figure and a non-public figure. That was concocted by the U.S. Supreme Court in a New York Times case, New York Times v. Sullivan. They manufactured that whole thing in order to ensure a free press, but it hasn't ensured a free press. It ensured an utterly irresponsible partisan press that tries to influence our elections, that tries to brainwash us with propaganda. That's not a free press. So those punishments that the states had and so forth, many of them were destroyed. So you have a very high bar when you're a public official. Very high bar. But there's no bar high enough when you accuse somebody of being convicted of rape and they haven't been. There's no standard that'll let you get away with that last time I checked. And so ABC News had to pay $15 million. George Stephanopoulos had to pay $1 million in legal fees or something. Nothing to him. He makes like $25 million a year, whatever he makes. Can you believe that, by the way? Can you believe that? A Clintonoid headed the war room against women. This is the nature of the incestuous relationship between the press and the Democrat Party and the radical left. But that's what's meant by a free press. So back then, when the years went on and we got a Constitution and then we got a Bill of Rights, and in the First Amendment, the free press, freedom of speech, that's when you could bring actual lawsuits against, well, they didn't have media companies back then, but against a publisher of a pamphlet, a publisher of a newspaper. They didn't really have bylines back then either. So if you're going to sue, you had to sue the whole entity, which wasn't that big to begin with. But that's what was done. It was done a lot. But then, of course, we got the court in the 60s, which was obviously the most brilliant court that courts have ever seen before. And that's when we get this New York Times Sullivan case. But it's done enormous damage to our country. Look, I want a free press. But you cannot have these buffoons who are Democrats, radicals, leftists, jihadists, Marxists, dressed up as journalists just by saying they're journalists and they work for some massive corporation that just happens to have a so-called media or news platform. Look at us. This is a free press. It's not a free press. It's a propaganda operation. Again, just like Pravda, just like Al Jazeera. Look what they did to Twitter. If it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't have known what was going on there. Like how they were in bed with the Democrats. Look at Zuckerturd and look what he did in the 2020 election. All right, we're going to move along. Our Power Hour is next. Don't miss it. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It is damn time to get this Bragg case out of the New York legal gulag and to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's no guarantee the High Court will take it, but it may well have presented the right way. I've explained repeatedly how it should be approached, but to no avail. So what's this going to do? Go on for months more? I don't quite understand. Well, we'll appeal it in New York. Okay, appeal all you want. I mean, I'm just saying I wish the approach that Arthur Ferguson and I had discussed at some length here several months ago, that I've written about, that I've discussed on Fox and on Blaze, till I'm blue in the face again. I wish somebody would listen. I don't just say these things, so look how smart, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. No, I'm mission-oriented, folks. You know that. I'm mission-oriented. Nobody's perfect. Just happens to be when it comes to this, I'm more perfect than most of the rest of them, right? I've explained repeatedly how you do this. And you've got a lot of arguments you could take to the Supreme Court, but as time goes on, it's going to become less and less urgent to the justices. So you're kind of even undermining that approach, because you're not availing yourself of that approach and saying it is urgent that we deal with this now and so forth. You're just waiting. You're taking more hits. You're taking more hits by this guy Merchan, who's a corrupt SOB, corrupt in the sense that he's biased. His daughter should have resulted in him recusing himself. You know all the arguments. You're going to keep going back to the same guy and expect to get a break or an honest answer? I mean, come on. And if that does happen at some point, and it could, congratulations, but we've already wasted 2 months here, as far as I'm concerned. Just one man's opinion, but nonetheless, it is mine. As I say, I don't get it. Worried about how that might look. Don't be worried about how it might look. This looks worse. This looks worse. I'm going to post those 2 sentences in hopes that the right people see what they need to see there, Mr. Producer. Because, look, my approach is not the typical approach of a former federal prosecutor, of a law professor, of a this or that or the other. It's the approach of somebody who has spent 40 years in the world of conservative legal litigation, up against the left, up against prosecutors, up against the IRS, up against the EPA, up against it all. We've had enormous amount of experience. This is not a typical case. And so you can't just paint by the numbers. Immunity is simply one argument. But there are many more arguments. Challenging the jurisdiction of a state court under these circumstances where the Federal Department of Justice is handing you your arguments. You can indict a sitting president. And when you read their memos, they're not just talking about indictment. They're talking about the whole process, including sentencing. They even say, Bragg's making these proposals. No, you can't hold off sentencing and hold it over a president. Those documents, as if they were written by Donald Trump's lawyers or me for Donald Trump. That's how good they are. That's how important they are. Plus, it's the principle of the thing. You cannot have a rogue prosecutor like this jackass Bragg. You can't have a state acting judge like this jackass Mershon put the nation through something like this. And they're still doing it. And what do you expect them to do? They're Democrat hacks. Bragg will get elected on this stuff. He's popular in his community. That is the left-wing community. Mershon hopes to get a bigger appointment. He's popular for, he's standing up. He's righteous. So it's not a matter of influencing those two. They can't be influenced. They're ideologues. They're political hacks. What are you going to do? File another brief? Maybe they'll go for an emergency appeal in New York, which would be wise. They can do this simultaneously, an emergency appeal and go to the U.S. Supreme Court at the same time. Why not? Well, we may get shot down. Yeah, you might. You just got shot down now. You just got shot down. I've never heard of these, these common law motions. That's the problem. You never have, because that's not how you practice law. That's how, when you're a former judge or a private prosecutor, state prosecutor, or this or that, you're right. You don't know these motions. I do. Ted Olson did in the Bush case. Others do. There's a handful of us. This is what we do. They're all rubbing their hands. They say document case. This is a slam dunk. Who says that? Barr. And I won't mention my colleagues. They're all slam dunk here. This is what the law said. There's no slam dunk. You got an entire list of motions to file, motions practice, that they don't practice. So they don't know. The appointments clause, Landmark Legal Foundation. I'm chairman, the president, and the staff worked it over, figured it out, and they're not the only ones. Professor Stephen Calabrese, another brilliant man. He also worked for Meese when I worked for Meese. He goes to Attorney General Meese. He goes to Attorney General Mukasey. They say the same thing. That's an unconstitutional appointment. That was damn slam dunk, for God's sakes. Well, it's where we are. Nobody's more frustrated than me than, I guess, Donald Trump. But I get very frustrated about this stuff. I really do. Again, not that there's a slam dunk, but there is a potential dunk. There is a potential dunk. Now, in case you haven't heard this, you should hear it, because everybody always quotes people on CNN. Have you noticed that, Mr. Producer? But, we got to quote, who's on CNN? I don't remember. Van Jones, right? Stephen, what's the guy's name? Scott Jennings. Got to quote Scott. Who else is there? I don't remember. But Van Jones was actually on with this guy, Chris Cillizza, who's a complete moron. But nonetheless, there they are. Moron to moron. But he says something Friday, which had to pain him. Had to pain him very much, Van Jones. Van Jones may be a Marxist, but he's no dummy. Well, Mark, isn't that kind of contradictory? No, you have a lot of smart Marxists. They're just ideologues, like Van Jones. But the only way, and I think Van Jones recognizes this, is that you're going to ever have a comeback as a party or a movement, is if you recognize your weaknesses and the strength of your opponent. Here he is. Cut 17, go.
Everybody keeps, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that, how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
Court, the popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime. And we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots.
Yes, you do. You're going to be shocked. Charlemagne, this guy, starting to make a lot more sense to me. Stephen A. Smith, who's always made a lot of sense to me, even though we don't always agree, he's making some very important points, too. See, people who think for themselves, who have a brain. And why do you think Stephen A. is so popular? Why do you think this guy Charlemagne's so popular? Even Van Jones. Why do you think? And they're totally different people. They have different ideologies and so forth. I would argue Stephen A. really doesn't have one, but whatever. Because they think. They think for themselves, even though sometimes you strongly disagree with them. This guy Charlemagne has said stuff over the last month. So what the hell is this guy? What is the God? And now he's saying a few things. Go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let me take another look at this guy. Because they're not banging their heads against the wall. They're not banging their heads against the wall. They're not marching to somebody else's drummer. They march to their own drummer. And I hope they keep doing it. Stephen A. Well, I'm talking about this Van Jones and Charlemagne. Because if they keep doing what they're doing right now, they're actually going to be contributing a lot of smart stuff to the public debate. If they resort back to what they used to spew, then they won't matter. They won't matter. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want to welcome to the airwaves our buddy, great litigator, Jim Trusty, Jim of the IFRA law firm. So we had Mershon here right before you came on the air. He issued an opinion this evening, apparently, saying that, no, immunity is not an issue in this case involving Trump. Everything regarding the hush money issue was purely private. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's totally predictable. Everything about that trial was unrecognizable if you care about due process and fair play. So I wasn't really banking on Judge Mershon to sprout a conscience when it comes to a trial that it was full of error. And I think it goes to the point you were making after that, which is, you've got to decide as a litigator, as somebody on behalf of President Trump, do we let this whole thing run its course unimpeded in state court in the hopes that the appellate judges throw this thing out, which I think they will eventually, or do you look for some sort of federal option? And is there any harm in trying to look for a federal option, which I think is the right way to look at it?
Now, this pardon stuff that Joe Biden's been doing, you have some knowledge about this. You have an opinion about this, don't you?
Yeah, well, didn't think I was going to have a war story on this, Mark, but I do. I was starting to hear about how all of these nonviolent offender commutations and pardons were actually coming off pretty badly. There was the Kids for Cash corrupt mayor in Scranton, Pennsylvania, who got a pardon. There were apparently Chinese spies. And so I actually looked at the list. And believe it or not, the first time I scaled through that list just to see about if there's any big names from that I was familiar with or that I had prosecuted, I didn't see this name. I think maybe I was in denial that it could ever be a possibility. But I got the electronic notice from the Maryland Federal Court when I was a prosecutor there about Josephine Gray, who I prosecuted with another prosecutor in 2001. She had killed 3 different men over a 25-year period and was so scary and successful in her murderous ways that we could never get a state case together. I was actually at the state's attorney's office when the second of those murders occurred. I know they tried to pull together a murder case. They just couldn't do it. People wouldn't cooperate. Family members wouldn't cross her. Everybody was afraid of her. But when I was a Fed, we decided to make a run at her under a wire and mail fraud theory of the Slayer's rule, that you can't profit from life insurance if you participated in a death, which she did on 3 occasions. So we put together this very challenging case, got a 40-year sentence, maxed her out under the statutes we had, and then I found out this week that she got a commutation from Joe Biden. So supposedly she's a nonviolent offender, Mark.
Do you know the basis for this? I mean, it's incredible to me.
No, I know that she kind of cried poor about being physically ill for a long time. She got herself transferred within the Bureau of Prisons to a medical facility some time ago, probably 10 years ago. And more recently, she had gotten herself released on home detention. And for him to come in at this point and cut her home detention by half a year is kind of astounding. I mean, I don't know who was championing this. I know that a lot of people lost a lot of sleep and had a lot of grief about Josephine Gray for a long time when she was known as the Black Widow murderer. And for some reason, she got on the list. I can't figure that one out to save my life.
Don't you suspect, though, that the lawyer knew somebody in the White House or the lawyer knew somebody who knew somebody in the White House? Isn't that how a lot of these go down?
Well, when you're intent on setting a record and doing, 1,500 of them in one swoop.
Unbelievable.
I don't think with this administration we're done. I think this was actually a bit of a trial balloon or a distraction from what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. But, you do wonder. I mean, I understand. Look, pardon is a legitimate power. There's times where it makes sense to be merciful or to undo some sort of historical wrong, like the Jack Johnson prosecutions of the old famous boxer Jack Johnson. I mean, There's moments where it makes sense. But to sit there and take someone who was engaged in murder and pretend that it's nonviolent because of the nature of the federal charges we cobbled together, you have to wonder what the connection is. And certainly it's a little more self-evident when you're talking about Chinese spies. Why would Joe Biden ever do anything to commute or pardon Chinese spies if there wasn't the ongoing problem of his family's wealth and his family's being compromised?
He owed them. That's the main reason. I mean, they wanted something for their money, and they got it. And in addition, there was a corrupt judge. There were two of them, actually, in the case that you mentioned, and the mayor throwing these young kids in for these long sentences for, drinking it illegally and stuff like that. They give them 8 months and things of that. So just outrageous. And but Biden seems impervious to all this, doesn't he?
Well, again, it's the question we've had for a couple of years, which is how much of this is Joe Biden directly and how much of this are people, pulling the levers from behind the scenes? I don't know. That corrupt judge of all places was from Scranton. So you'd think that Biden would at least have some knowledge. I mean, he purports to be Scranton Joe. You think he'd have some knowledge of a judge who was profiting by putting kids in prison where they otherwise wouldn't. I mean, can you imagine being a family member, your kid got picked up for whatever, drinking in public, and he's suddenly in a prison, a hellhole, because of a corrupt judge getting money for those referrals. And then to hear later that this president decides to cut that guy slack and give him a pardon is just astounding. I mean, this is that president who kept talking about rule of law with Hunter Biden's pardon, and he has blown that to complete obliteration at this point.
Now, you went nose to nose for a while there with Jack Smith. Now, he's not completely shutting shop, is he? He's got co-defendants in some of these cases, and they're still pursuing them, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that will have the effect of forcing the president into a pardon for the two gentlemen that are indicted with him were indicted with him on the Mar-a-Lago case. And to me, that's really kind of sick. The only reason Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira got prosecuted in the first place was to pressure them into flipping against President Trump. It's really that clear. From the inside, I can tell you that's all that was going on. The government, Jack Smith, thought these were guys that might be able to deliver them President Trump on a platter. So they went hard, pressured him, failed, and now they're still trying to go up against them in the Court of Appeals from the 11th Circuit.
Jim Trusty, I want to carry over the break. Jim's saying there, he says, what's sick is that they're going after these two guys, even though the case against Trump is dropped. In other words, that's how venal this prosecutor is. We'll be right back.
But then, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
We're here with our friend Jim Trusty, litigator extraordinaire with the IFRA Legal Group. Jim Trusty, had you ever heard much about preemptive pardons before? I mean, I knew they existed, but I don't remember them being front of mind. Do you?
Oh, sure. I remember the case from the Reconstruction in the 1860s every time I walk around. So, Yeah, there is a 5-4 Supreme Court decision from like 1871 or something that seems to condone the notion of it. And of course, Gerald Ford in pardoning Nixon, you could call that a preemptive pardon as well. I don't think that the historical precedents are, number one, totally without the possibility of challenging them someday. But number two, I don't think they were what's intended when you talk about what's happened with Hunter Biden and with some of the behavior of this administration.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, I know it's never been applied the way they're thinking of applying it. Anybody who might be charged by the next administration. I know Carter did it for draft dodgers, Washington. I mean, I've looked at all this stuff. This would be wholly different than what's come before. And I just don't think they give a damn. They're probably figuring, well, catch me if you can, and you can't catch me, I'm out of here. Pretty lawless.
Yeah, it is. And the problem is it's going to be really improbable to see a challenge to a pardon like that because the deterrence is pretty strong. If you're a prosecutor, you're not going to invest a bunch of time going after somebody who at least superficially seems to be pardoned.
No, and I think the court will uphold it. They won't like it, but that's a plenary power. I don't see any limitation to it in any other respect. I mean, it's going to be a problem, but this is the problem, isn't it, with the left in many respects? They push the envelope, then they go over the edge of the envelope. I think Smith did a lot of this, which is why you had to keep going to the Supreme Court on immunity issues and other issues. And then they pushed the 14th Amendment to a ridiculous point where they're trying to move Trump from the ballot. This is kind of more of the same, don't you think?
It is. I mean, look, this is all just lawfare. It is this concerted effort to say, well, here's who we're targeting. How do we get there? Let's keep him off the ballot. Let's get rid of his executive privilege. Let's get rid of his attorney-client privilege. Everything that comes from the left, and you could really trace it back, I think, to the impeachments where they cheapened the currency of impeachment. They've decided because it's Donald Trump, they have to take extraordinary acts. They have to be inventive. And that degrades the law and the criminal justice system and even the pardon process when they keep making their own exceptions because of the devil they see on the other side of the aisle.
You're 100% right. You're listening to Jim Trusty with the IFRA Legal Group. He's absolutely fantastic. Jim, thank you, my man. I appreciate it. Have a great, great holiday.
Hey, you too. Great talking to you, Mark.
You too. If I were in trouble, I'd hire him. He is really good. Don't you think, Mr. Producer? He's sharp as hell. Speaking of the opposite, we have Lindsey Graham. Lindsey, where are you, Lindsey? I'm in the basement, Ma. Lindsey, come upstairs now. Okay, Ma. He's on Meet the Depressed. I guess they couldn't find any other senators. So where does he stand now on Pete Hegseth? Does anybody know? Well, let's hear. Being questioned by Kristen Welker, who's a liar, as I explained on either Saturday or Sunday with respect to birthright citizenship, when she only read half the sentence out of the Constitution. Whenever you see Kristen Welker, just say, liar. Cut 19, go.
Pete Hegseth did sign a non-disclosure agreement with this person who came forward to accuse him of sexual misconduct. Do you want to see that? Should that type of
hold on.
information-
Notice how she asks questions. She asks questions of conservatives and Republicans like she's an interrogator. She doesn't ask reporter questions. Are you gonna press Pete Hegseth to lift the non-disclosure on the non-disclosure agreement? Yeah. He's gonna release her from it. Is that what you're gonna do? Yeah. It's like that Caitlin Collins or whatever the hell her name was. Are you gonna accept the election results? Yes. They assume Trump's gonna lose. You're gonna accept them? Yes or no? Yes or no? Now the Democrats, of course, they never accept elections when they lose. Now that's different. They're just different. Okay, Lindsay, what do you say about the information in the non-disclosure agreement? What about it? Go ahead.
Be released? Do you want to hear
he
from
said,
me?
he said, he told me he would release her from that agreement. Yeah, I mean, just think about what we're talking about. I'd want to know if anybody nominated for a high-level job in Washington legitimately assaulted somebody.
Stop. Nobody legitimately assaults anybody. Do they, mister? Am I missing something? Hello, English language. What do you mean legitimately assaulted somebody? I'm just curious about that. All these people, and I'm not saying he's one of them, they all have stuff in their closet. They do. I wonder if they'd feel the same way. Probably not. The shoe on the other foot, as they say. Go ahead.
I met him in Afghanistan. I've heard nothing but good things about his service over there. He's a friend. The Pete Heggs, I know this is not a problem I've been aware of. However, if people have an allegation to make, come forward and make it, like they did in Kavanaugh.
Whoa. Like they did in Kavanaugh? I mean, oh, my Lord. I think I was the first one to say this is like Kavanaugh, certainly among them. And like Clarence Thomas, hey, if you have an allegation to make, come on, just like Kavanaugh. Well, are you serious, Lindsay? Just like Kavanaugh? Do you know those allegations? You know how they got made? You know where they came from? Look, we have a yearbook here. Oh, what's in there? He used the word Frank. Now, that's the guy's name. Frank. We know what Frank means, don't we, Mr. Producer? Like a Frankfurter? That's what he meant. What? Go ahead.
Whether or not it's credible. Right now, he's being tried by anonymous sources. That will not stand.
All right, thanks for nothing. There you go. I think we should go to some callers. You know what? I'd rather listen to callers than politicians anyway. I really would. Oh, we got our man Jimmy, Brooklyn, New York, expert on all things communist. Jimmy, on the great WABC, how are you, sir?
All righty, you're doing a good job here. I like the revelations about the Kennedy family, but there's another guy that had connections all the way back to Lenin himself, not John Lennon of the Beatles, but the Soviet founder. And that was Armand Hammer.
Right.
Armand Hammer was
big
a
oil
great
tycoon.
friend. Right, and he got rich from Lenin. He helped Lenin out. He was a personal friend of Lenin, according to Armand Hammer. And Armand Hammer was very close to Al Gore Sr., the senator. It was money from Lenin to Armand Hammer to Al Gore Sr. that went to found a group called Council for a Livable World, which is the group that picked a nobody and put him in the Senate. That was Joe Biden. So Al Gore Sr. had very close connections to the communists, just like Kennedy. There's a lot of people like this out there. John Kerry's group, Vietnam Veterans Against the War. I was at the protest during the Vietnam War, and people from that group or with the group were flying the communist flag. So John Kerry's group, Vietnam Veterans Against the War, was at the same address as the National Council American-Soviet Friendship Committee, which was a KGB front group whose head guy actually got arrested by the FBI when he was caught getting his bag full of money from a KGB agent. That was Reverend Alan Thompson, who was the head of the National Council American-Soviet Friendship Committee. They had an office on the Lower East Side, which some people call the East Village. 85 East 4th Street was the headquarters of the National Council American-Soviet Friendship Committee. Now it's just called the KGB bar. Mm-hmm. So you got connections here between Communist Party, Soviets, going back decades. Armand Hammer, it's already 100 years old, the connection between Armand Hammer and then, of course, after that, Al Gore Sr. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of this money flying around, all of this work against Trump. Trump came in here at the right time in American history where we were really at the verge of total defeat. Because the communists, the world communist movement, working with the world globalists, working with the UN, we are really, really in a lot of trouble. You know who else had trouble like this? President Harding. President Harding was attacked by communists.
We're going to have to wait for the next session with you, Jimmy, for that one. I've got to run.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Next session, Harding. Thank you, my brother. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
A few more calls, shall we? Yes, we shall. Let's go to Maria in Long Island on the great WABC. Maria, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. I'm calling in a little late. I got off work, so I didn't hear the beginning of the show, but I wanted to see what the drone situation was. I live in Lake Grove, and I just saw local 12 News the other day said somebody had sighted one around here. I did see that President Trump is getting involved and asking some questions, but I wanted to see if there was any more light shed on this situation.
There's no more light to shed because unless they shed light on it and give us the information, I don't have independent information. As far as my tentacles go, I still don't have independent information. President thinks it's our government. I think it's a foreign government. If I had to guess, the Communist Chinese, I have no way of knowing. But to this extent, and all these states, and the number of drones, it has to be a significant force. It's not; these aren't all manned aircraft and all the rest. We're not stupid. We know what a manned aircraft looks like. Maybe some people make mistakes if it's long distance. But even the former governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, he had a pretty close-up shot, and that didn't look like any manned aircraft. It looked like a drone. Yeah. So, well, do you have any information for us?
No, I do not. I just saw a couple. It's incredible that they're popping up everywhere. It's like the East Coast, so it seems. But just some information. I got a man that works, I guess, outsources. He makes drones or whatever, and was saying that it was something that they're sniffing out, possibly again, or radioactive.
I didn't hear that.
Stuff.
Sniffing out? Say that again?
These drones are equipped to, like, if
they're not sniffing out. When you send up drones, and you send up this many drones, and in some of them they've been flying in a specific kind of order, as they were in Virginia, near Quantico, in other parts of Virginia. They're mapping. You know what mapping is?
That's the other thing.
They're mapping the areas. All right, we lost you. I'm sorry, Maria. They're mapping the areas, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're doing. If they are what I suspect, and again, I don't have proof, but I didn't just fall off the tuna boat. I mean, what the hell? So mapping the areas means that's why they're flying over the Coast Guard area. They're flying over military depots, military forts, nuclear sites, Trump's facility in New Jersey. They're not like flying over an old 7-Eleven. You notice that, Mr. Producer? Look at that. There's what's that? We love those 5 hot dogs for $1. All beef. Yeah, I bet they are. Anyway, yeah. They're not flying over, city dumps. They're not flying over, illegal alien housing areas. No. They're flying over sensitive infrastructure. And as I said on day one, what concerns me is their ability to attack our electrical grid, because this is very Keystone Cop stuff. Hey, which way did they go? Who is it? I don't know. And there seems to be very little urgency behind it. And you do have members of Congress who are correctly jumping up and down and demanding answers. And it's really quite repulsive. I think we may get the final answer when Donald Trump takes over, his administration does, and we're going to trust him because we know he tells us what he thinks. He tells us what he sees, and he'll tell us what he thinks and sees. And if he were to say it's mostly manned, I would believe it. I don't believe these guys. These guys, for 3 years, the border's secure. Well, 20 million people are coming. Oh, look at that. The border's secure. Oh, okay. Don't look over there. Look over there. Oh, the border's secure. Oh, there's no inflation. What do you know? No, there's no inflation. Those people we don't believe. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel. We have your backs. And you, the American people, red-blooded Americans, thank you for everything you do every day. You saved your country. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.